We are broadcasting live.
So good morning, everyone. This is the meeting of the Town of Mono Council on Tuesday, May 28th. This meeting is being conducted both in chambers and by means of electronic participation as permitted by Section 238, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and the Town of Mono Procedural Bylaw 2020-42. Residents can follow us online or later on through the link on our website. We have a quorum. Location of emergency exits for everyone's information are at the rear of the council chamber. Members are free to declare pecuniary interest at this point in the meeting or at any point in the course of the meeting, followed up in writing with the clerk. And I'm calling on Elaine Capes to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Mono resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Teotate, Adawandran, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources.
Thank you. I've got a motion that Council approves the agenda of Session 10-2024 as circulated. Moved by Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any opposition? Motion is carried. I have a motion that Council approves the minutes of Session 9-2024 as circulated. Moved by Councillor Manctalo, seconded by Melinda. Any opposition? Motion is carried. I have a declaration with regard to Pride Month. Whereas June is recognized as Pride Month in Canada and around the world as an opportunity to celebrate sexual diversity, promote equal rights, and build awareness of the challenges faced by the LGBTQ 2S plus community. And whereas Pride Month is an opportunity to prevent discrimination and promote acceptance and inclusion of all and to support the development of harmonious and respectful relationships among all members of our community, and whereas the town of Mono celebrates the diversity of our gender and sexual minority communities, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning two-spirit or more, and expresses a commitment to the diversity, equity, and inclusion of our organization and our community, and whereas during Pride Month we can all reflect on the progress made to recognize and protect the rights of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning two-spirit or more communities and the work that still needs to be done. Therefore, on behalf of Council, I'm declaring that June is Pride Month in the town of Mono, and that's duly signed. Fred?
Could I just add to that there will be a flag-raising ceremony on June the 3rd at 11 o'clock on Zion Street in front of the county buildings.
Thank you. And do we have a flag raising?
We'll be raising the Progress Pride flag also on Monday, June 3rd, without a particular ceremony. It'll fly for most of the month, but on June 25th, we'll be replacing it with the Unity and Diversity flag, which will fly for that week. And that will actually have a ceremony prior to council meeting.
We need a third flagpole.
And we did actually cost a third and fourth one a couple of years ago, but we didn't install one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Public question period. Do we have any questions submitted?
We have two questions, Your Worship, that were submitted online in advance. And the first question is, what is the works to avoid the chocolate pudding effect on road networks across Mono, for example, Mono Agila Town Line, And this came from the spring town hall meeting where council committed to addressing this concern.
Okay. Chocolate pudding effect. Matt, can you speak to the chocolate pudding effect?
Test. Everybody hear me? Thanks, Mayor Coleman. Public Works has been applying maintenance gravel now for about 2 weeks. We expect to wrap up on Friday. We've come across 30 Side Road from Highway 10, right across the Mono-Agila town line and south down to 20 Side Road. Maintenance gravel obviously helps eliminate these issues, but you can't 100% eliminate these issues with maintaining gravel roads. So we're putting on 2 good products, granulary products, limestone based and traditional granulary, and it's supposed to be wrapped up and with calcium to follow. So the hope is that we'll help eliminate the chocolate pudding effect.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just through you to Public Works, the chocolate pudding effect that was mentioned, I think they were also talking about Mono-Agila Town Line as well, the ladies. I know he is, but the ladies at the town hall who coined the phrase. It's not something that's going to happen now in June. It's going to happen in the freeze thaw that happens in, I guess, March or whatever, when the real frost is coming out of the ground. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Thanks, Councillor Davey. Yeah, generally it does, and like this road hasn't seen maintenance gravel, I believe, for about 5 years. So, you know, as the cycles get short, like our applications don't draw out as much because our quantities are being limited. Our zones aren't all being applied to, so some of these roads don't see gravel for 4 to 6 years, maybe. But yeah, generally it'll come out in the fall. Or the spring, sorry. We don't get a lot of freeze in our roads anymore, so we're hovering around 0 a lot of the time, and the sun gets on it during the day in the wintertime, and it starts to thaw out, and then it freezes up at night, so you get a lot of that back and forth. So I would say, yeah. And the hope is to get a good lift of maintenance gravel on the road and increase the crown on the road, and that sheds the water off a lot quicker, and the water's not storing on the road, it's getting out to the ditches.
Can I just follow up on that? That's terrific. Thank you for letting us know the details. But the comment about how that road hasn't been served for 4 or 5 years, and that's because we're trying to do stuff within the budget that we have, right? Is that why?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's not that we don't have the manpower or that we don't have the time or that we've ignored one road over another. It's that we're trying to stretch our budget, right?
That's correct. We're prioritizing the roads within the zones we have with the material that we are allocated.
The second submitted question?
The second question, coming from the same resident, is there any further input on Fusion Tech / Rogers Communication fiber installs within the town of Mono?
I can speak to that and possibly staff as well. As everyone is aware, there was obviously a problem last year in terms of the rate of installation that was occurring on the 3rd line and 4th line in particular. And I'm reliably informed that Rogers has sorted out issues with its subcontractor. And I wouldn't say, I'm hesitant to say an enormous amount of work is going to be done between now and the fall, but I'm assured that the work is going to pick up a pace. I believe they have been into file for more occupancy permits, and I think we're going to see some significant progress over the next 4 or 5 months. Would either Matt or Mike like to address that?
Thanks, Mayor Croman. Yes, so I would say that Fusion Tech is definitely moving along quicker this year than they did in the previous years. We've issued 3 permits this year, I believe, 2 or 3 permits this year. They're currently working on here Ontario Street north of Hockley Road, Dufferin Road 7, and they're working across 10 Side Road towards First Line. They've come up First Line, and the last permit we issued was north of 10 Side Road on here Ontario Street. So we are issuing them, and I'm not sure what the remark is with respect to being left in the dark, because as soon as we issue the permit, the mapping on the town's website is updated. So every permit that we issue, it gets updated on the town's website. And by all means, again, if there's questions, residents, I encourage them to contact Public Works directly, and we'll give them all the information that we have with respect to installs. We're working with the contractor. There is still challenges because they're working right on the roadside. They're excavating parts of the road, so there are challenges with that. So we are receiving some complaints from residents with respect to the installs and some of the inconveniences that are left and some of the damage to the boulevard. But we are working with Fusion Tech and trying to work with Rogers as well and the residents. So,
Mike, and then
Thank you, Mayor Crum. Just to add to that, yeah, the website group has definitely been updating the permitting system as much as we can on a timely manner. I think it's fair to say, though, to this resident, Mono Edge at the town line is not on the scope right now. It is on the big picture that Rogers has said they were going to do all of Mono. Unfortunately, we don't control Rogers' production rate, but they seem to be working from the southwest corner of Mono towards the northeast, which is where this resident lives. So, but the place to go for the updates is the website.
And we process those applications almost as very, very short turnaround, I gather.
yes, so within the week, and a lot of the times they don't get picked up the day they've already been reviewed. They literally need to be signed and issued once they come to get them. So,
Ralph?
To the mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a two-step procedure. We run the lines along the road and then we connect them with the residents. Has there been any connection with residents? Are anybody getting high-speed internet yet?
thanks, Councillor Manctillo. I'm not 100% sure of how many have been connected. We have sent some emails to Rogers, and we haven't received any responses to those as to how many have been connected or where they plan on officially getting to this year. But we continue to seek that information.
As you know, this is quite disappointing. When we got the original information from Rogers, we regurgitated, if you like, to the residents, and it was that they were going to have some high-speed internet shortly, which has not happened. So this is disappointing.
Yeah. And as I say, I think they had installation issues in their first year due to topography and rock formations and that kind of thing. I think it's fair to say that this is not a situation where there's going to be a big event and somebody will push a button and the entire town will light up with internet. I think they will connect it as they go, and I'm optimistic about connections this year based on my information. Okay. Any questions from the gallery? Rob? If you could come forward and press the button, that would be great. The button. Yeah.
You're being recorded.
Simple question. Why are Rogers duplicating the work of North Frontenac Telephone Company on here, Ontario Street? We're already connected to the high-speed system.
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure what the answer is. Rob, if you could give us your full name and address.
My name's Rob Best.
Yeah.
674-138 here, Ontario Street, Rob Best. Thank you.
Terrific. That's a really good question, and I've heard various things, and I wouldn't want to repeat them because I don't know that they're accurate, but we can certainly find out. I know that there were issues with regard to North Frontenac's installation when it occurred, and also heard that some of those issues have been addressed, and I've met both happy customers and not so happy customers. I don't know which category you fall into.
I'm a happy customer. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. So seeing anyone online with a question? Okay. So we have a delegation representing the Headwaters Streams Committee and if I can invite both of you to come up to the table and introduce yourselves and.
And with your permission,
Yeah.
could I just do an introduction? The Karen Morrison and Rob Best are going to be asking council for permission to spend $2,000. The reason they have to do that is under the 2012 Memorandum of Understanding, which created the Headwater Streams Committee, we collect money both from donations and taxpayers' money. Ballpark $19,000 in donations so far, about $32,000 from the taxpayers. So before we can spend any money on a new project, we need council's permission just to make sure we're not doing something frivolous. That's why there's a request today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Creelman and council, and thank you for allowing us to come and speak about a project we've been working on for 3 years now. We embarked on you would call it a brook trout mapping study in the tributaries to the Nottawasaga River. The reason we did this is brook trout are an indicator species, so it wasn't just about brook trout, but it's an indicator of the health of everything else that's in that stream, including plant life, tree life. So last summer, we did a study on Mona Center Creek. And we discovered a very healthy population of brook trout on a section of the creek at the Whitetail Refuge area, at the bridge there. We took some temperatures, some temporary temperature data at that time, and we noticed that there was some warming of temperature. So we took the temperature data from where the section that we studied, but we also went beyond that. And we noticed beyond that, life had changed quite a bit. So we wanted to figure out why. This study is updating a study that was done in 1962. So it's helping Mono and all the other interested parties understand what is happening in our streams and creeks and rivers so that we can build upon a plan of the priority areas, and that will be determined by, best possible impact for the work that we do. The Mona Center Creek study that we did in 2023 in the summer, we realized we needed further investigation to understand what was happening. So we are looking towards, in June, if we get permission to spend our money, to set 5 data loggers in various locations. There are 3 input streams feeding the ponds there. There are 2 ponds, and there's an output stream. So what we want to do is we want to put 3 data loggers into the input stream. So before these streams reach the ponds, we want to study the temperature there and the flow. And then we want to study the output from the pond, as well as go about 1 kilometer downstream to see what that temperature and flow is like. And the reason we want to do that is because that will help us understand if there's mitigation happening from springs that could be popping up downstream. So this is really an investigative study that we want to conduct so that we better understand what's happening at Mona Center Creek and analyze the data. I think the data will be analyzed this fall, and then we can present what we've learned from this study. Headwaters Stream Committee will be participating in the installation of these loggers, so we'll be involved with Nottawasaga Valley Conservation. So it'll be the two groups working together to do this. It will be NVCA that do the reporting and study. Because they have the expertise, they have the tools to analyze, we'll be relying on them to give the results of the data loggers. Fred, do you have the photo of the, that I sent of the streams, or where we'll put the loggers?
Andrew, can you put the map from the delegation on screen? Thank you.
So it's you can see the two ponds there. And so S1, S3, S4, S5 are your inputs, okay? S2 is an output, and then you won't see, we couldn't make the map large enough to do the 1 kilometer down the stream. So those will be the placement. Now, when you look at S5, that's Mono Center Road. And across there, we planted, about 3 weeks ago, we planted about 500 trees and shrubs along that creek, because we know that will help with cooling. And in the field where the first pond is, there was probably about 1,500 trees and shrubs planted there. So, you know, there's some good work happening to have a decent canopy to look at road runoff for toxins, because plants and trees are very good at mitigating that and looking after that. So work has already started on helping this property. We want to spend $2,000 of our money. We do have it in our account. We did receive some funding for these previous projects from Dufferin Northern Peel Anglers and Hunters, and they're very interested in this project as well. We will be speaking to them in September as well, because we have some results from the 24 sites that we did do. So they're very, very interested in those sites and ongoing working with us. So are there any questions?
Actually, Karen, I have one. The site identified as S5, I think that looks to me like the third line.
It's actually the second line, John, Mr. Mayor.
Is it?
That map points north. I'm sorry, points south. Top of the map is south. Sorry, yeah, I know, I did a bait and switch. It's actually, no pun intended. So the top of the map is actually south. So the road is, the maps are east of that roadway.
And I have been completely confused as to the ponds in question. They look to me like the ponds on the now Bruce Trail property. And S5 looks like the culvert location where we replaced a culvert last year across the third line.
I can't speak to the culvert replacement, but I can speak to the fact that there are two streams crossing there.
Yeah.
There's two ponds on the west side of the road at that location, which come through as a single stream. And then about another 150 meters south of that, there's another crossing from a single pond on the east side.
All right. Okay, I was confused as to the location.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'm still not quite clear. So, Rob, that S4, S5, those two ponds there. Thank you. Those two ponds are east of the second line,
Correct.
and at what level?
Immediately south of the village of Mono Center.
Okay. Okay.
So that's basically the
Okay.
Turnbull property is a property to the north of those two ponds.
Right. Got it. Okay. Another question is about the data. You mentioned flow. You're going to get volume on these streams as well as temperatures?
I believe there is a,
Yes.
the intention to get flow. It's fairly consistent though because they're spring fed, so they remain relatively consistent throughout the year. It's really about the impacts of the ponds on the streams and determining what that input temperature is and what the output temperature is and how much groundwater recharge impact there is a kilometer down. So we can judge just what the best science is in dealing with the ponds and how to mitigate their impacts on the stream and whether there's real value in dealing with those ponds.
So the ponds presently have, if I can continue, Mayor, the ponds presently have a dam. And do they have a bottom draw, or what's the situation?
No, unfortunately, there's no functioning bottom draw.
So, and you mentioned, Karen, that there was some change in temperature since the 1962, I think, study?
There was, well, the update, we didn't compare, maybe NVCA did, the temperature data, I'm sure they did, but what we did do in the summer of last year is notice a 4 degrees Celsius difference between where we were studying and then the output from the pond. So we wanted to further investigate that because that's quite significant, not just for brook trout, Councillor Mangtalo, but for all the other species that required cold oxygenated water.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This sounds very interesting. I'm intrigued. If we're working with, as the Headwaters Streams Committee, working with the NVCA, and the NVCA is the one that's going to analyze the data, and the NVCA has the employees that come, the people with the equipment and everything. What's our $2,000 go to? Does it go directly to the NVCA, or are we, as the Headwaters Streams Committee, Monos, taxpayers contributing? Are we getting the equipment, or where's the $2,000
The data
going?
loggers are in demand, so it'll be the data loggers, it'll be the staff time for analyzing the data. But we've been working on this project as a joint project, so it's been inclusive in terms of getting volunteers out from within our community to understand. It's resulted in us doing the healthy pond checks. So there's been a lot of spin-off from doing this actual work where we can possibly use this data to help maybe new residents understand how to work with their pond, if they want to keep their pond, how to keep it healthy.
Right. No, it sounds great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Well, I do have a motion that we authorize the expenditure of up to $2,000 of the Headwaters Streams Committee's funds to be used in 2024 to conduct 5 additional brook trout study sites in the Upper Nottawasaga watershed. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any further discussion? Any opposed to the motion? Motion's carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everything else is thousand.
Thank you. I have an unforeseen emergency crisis. Nothing to be concerned about, but I need 5 minutes, so I'm going to hand the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Nix.
Okay, I think we're up to unfinished business. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions? Elaine?
Maybe this was me looking at this and I just couldn't figure it out, but it said page is 1 of 2, but I only saw 1 page.
There is only the one page. When that was printed, it created a blank page, which I deleted. That was just formatting from the software.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I have one, but I'll let the rest of council go first. Okay. I did circulate a email that we got to staff and council about somebody who's very concerned with short-term rentals. I'm not going to repeat it here. You've seen the email. There's obviously a problem. Whoever owns the property are renting it out for things like weddings and events. So I replied to him that we have asked staff for a report on short-term rentals and whether it's feasible or not to develop a bylaw. And right now we have that unfinished business labeled as medium priority. I would request or suggest that we raise that to high priority. Having said that, I'm not, just so the clerk knows it, I think it would be great if we could regulate short-term rentals, but I'm very concerned with the administrative costs and the enforcement. That's going to be the clerk's job to report back to us. Does anyone else have any feelings on this subject before? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nix. Well, yes, I have feelings on it. I brought it forward as being something that's kind of important for all of our residents, not just the person who emailed, but for all of our residents in all of the areas. But this resident this time was in a rural setting, but it's even more rampant going on in our developed areas. And so, yes, but it's got to be over to staff because we have this long list of a very large number of items on his plate. So that's my comment, that, yeah, it's important to us all.
Councillor Capes.
I actually support you in maybe raising the urgency of this because summer's coming and it's going to be bad. Not that we're going to get this settled before that. I'd like to say our joint motion that we brought forward was because this was an issue last year and there were a lot of people being bombarded by unwanted noise, unwanted garbage. I know somebody has complained to me about somebody who over and over they complained to the town about the garbage being left behind every weekend. So I think it is of more importance perhaps than we have it labeled as. So maybe something has to be pushed, but that's up to staff to advise us. Thank you.
Could we ask the clerk, he has penciled in that he hopes to have his report done by the first quarter of 2025. Is there any possibility of speeding that up, Mr. Simpson?
Absolutely. Of course, it will affect other items on the list. So it will push it above a few other items, which right now it's below. Now, I haven't been sitting idly. I have been doing the background research, which still needs to be finished the research and compile the information into a report. That report is basically going to explain to council what the regime would be in order to license short-term rentals and point out the concerns and issues with establishing a business licensing regime, which is the route that has to be done. One of my concerns that will also be pointed out is that every municipality that's doing this, and I've spoken to personally to 4 now, so North Bruce, Ramera, Kawartha Lakes, and London. And without exception, they all use AMPs and recommend that this cannot be done without administrative monetary penalties.
Sorry, what's an AMP?
AMPs is administrative monetary penalties. That replaces POA, Provincial Offences Act. And the treasurer has mentioned this in the past. The county is working on, the county staff at the county as well as the lower tier municipalities are working cooperatively to see if a administrative monetary penalty system can be put in place. Mayor Creelman introduced a notice of motion at County Council a couple weeks ago, and the county clerk has already reached out. So my report can come sooner than originally anticipated, later this year, but my report will include that AMPS needs to be put in place prior to licensing short-term rentals. That's just a heads up on what you're going to see later this year.
And just, if I could ask one further question. In doing this report, Mr. Simpson, what I thought of is, this is a difficult job, licensing and then regulating and enforcing short-term rentals. Is there any possibility other communities in Dufferin County are thinking of it or are interested? And since we've both done service delivery studies recently, is this something, and maybe you could address this in your report, that would be better left to the county to regulate?
So the county is not interested in regulating this. So far, no other municipality in Dufferin has expressed an interest. Orangeville would have been the obvious choice because they're the only ones with a lot of rental. And to date, they're not interested, though most are interested in AMPS, which, as I mentioned, is a precursor. And then Treasurer Haluka had also pointed out that he felt, and I agree with him, that a transient accommodation tax could be incorporated at the same time to help fund it. Because if council does go down the route of licensing, the experience from other small municipalities is it's very expensive to enforce.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councillor Davey.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I mean, we brought this forward as a fair way of saying, let's license it, let's have it happening. It's happening, there's some benefits to it, there's some negatives, let's license it so that we can police it, so that everybody can be happy. But, you know, every municipality has their ability to do whatever they want. And, you know, where they've been banning this and banning that in different places, I mean, it is certainly still up for discussion, I think, as a community. Perhaps people, in general, people don't want it. And so there's other way, if it's going to be too much money to be able to administer it, the other answer, of course, is to say, you know, we don't do that in Mono, right? Which is something that we hadn't really thought of before, but would solve our problem with respect to the negative part of it, and that people would have to, you know, reconsider how they monetize their properties. But it also is that it isn't meant to be hotels and vacant properties that are being rented. The new bylaws that are coming out from other big cities because of the complaining bad part of this temporary housing thing is just like that.
Yes, some of us are familiar with those.
Yes, is that it has to be, yeah, is that there are stipulations on that it has to be only a portion of your house, that you're there monitoring it as the owner, and that you're allowing people to come and stay in it. And like the one that you sent us, and as other ones they're advertised as, the Mono is a wonderful, beautiful place to come and stay. And so enjoy it, but it's not for you to abuse because I'm here watching the property, right? I mean, there's all sorts of ways that we could add a bylaw that didn't go down this administrative road, I think, if it ends up being too costly. But we got to get all the information so that we can put it out to the residents to decide what to do.
All right, so does everyone on council agree then that we raise the priority of this particular item to a high priority? Is that agreeable?
High and as soon as possible. And I realize that puts other things after it, but as I say, the summer months are coming, and this is when it's going to be very popular, and that's when we're going to get the complaints. And I guess the other thing, too, is in the meantime, we can encourage residents to call the OPP, because if they see something going on a property that looks suspicious, like big partying, lots of noise, amplified sound, they can call the OPP and they can report a disturbance. So that's what I would encourage.
Okay, I think that deals with, no other comments on unfinished business? Well then,
Actually, Mr. Chair, if on the matter that was just being discussed, I think I know which one it is. I'm wondering whether council would countenance a letter to the provincial government specifically to the issue that I raised with the MPAC representatives, that there doesn't appear to be a way of categorizing the short-term rental properties as a business, as a commercial undertaking. They're taxed as regular residents, and I think that flies in the face of reality, and it may also be a way of reining in some of this activity. So I'd like a run at writing the province a letter encouraging a new category in terms of a residence that is being used for commercial purposes.
That's a very good point. Okay, with that then, should we move on to the next item? Or Mr. Do we need a motion? We don't have any motions prepared on this item.
We've traditionally had a motion to put matters onto this list, and I think if we want to change the priority, there should be a motion. It could be something very simple.
Mr. Clerk?
That counts, sorry, go ahead. The council for the town of Mono agrees to change the priority of short-term accommodations bylaw from medium to high,
And that we.
and further that the,
We authorize the mayor to prepare a letter to the province.
we authorize the mayor to prepare a letter to the province with respect to, I'll leave that.
Did you get all that, Mr. Simpson? You're typing as fast as you can. Okay, can I have a
And,
mover?
and further that the high priority on the noise bylaw and the new site alteration bylaw be reviewed.
Oh,
And that, because you've now modified our list and our focus, and it will affect two
Okay.
items, the noise bylaw and the new site alteration bylaw.
so the motion has 3 clauses. One, that we increase the priority of number 15. 2, that we authorize the mayor to prepare a letter. And 3, that we review the priorities of the noise bylaw, which other one?
The new site alteration
New
bylaw.
site alteration bylaw. Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion?
I'll move.
Move it. Cape seconds it. Yes, you have the floor.
Mr. Dunmore's brought up a very important point, which is what I wanted to talk about before the movement. We've actually got 4 other items that are high priorities here, and some are related too, like kite flying. So I think we have to be very cautious what we're doing here. Not to say that this isn't important, but we've also had a large home planning report that's been sidelined. I shouldn't say sidelined, but asked for go back to the drawing table. And I'm sure that's got a lot of effort, a lot of energy that has to be put into that, and 3 others. So I think we really have to be cautious when we do what you've recommended, despite the fact that I've
Yes,
agreed
Mayor
with the
Creelman.
motion.
The kite flying or battling kites, we put it out for public comment, and I think it's been out long enough, and we should be able to deal with it at the next meeting.
So, Your Worship, I have it scheduled for June 25th for the kite fighting bylaw. That gives staff time to close off public input, compile the information, write a report, and bring that all to council. Part of that is I will not be in attendance in person on the June 16th meeting, but I will be virtual, and I prefer to be in the room for the conversation.
Yeah, it's all but complete.
Well,
Do we have any, do we have any feedback?
We have some, but I'm not sure of the status of the feedback at the moment, Your Worship.
Most feedback I'm getting is get on with it and do it.
Okay, listen,
I-
we have a motion on the floor, okay? The motion does ask the clerk to review the status of some of these others. You can come back at the next meeting and say, I reviewed the status, and you're gonna have to let some of these slip, or else I can't put the short-term rentals as high priority. You could come back with that report, Mr. Simpson. Okay, any other comments on the motions on the floor? Councillor Capes?
I agree with that, Mr. Nix, and I would say not to specifically name any of those other unfinished business items, rather to say that we understand there's ramifications and that those priorities may shift and that will come back to the next council meeting.
Okay, and I think that's inherent in the motion that's on the floor. Anyone opposed to the motion on the floor? The motion is carried. I will now turn the gavel back over to Mayor Creelman.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the new Tecumseth Public Library Board Agreement. And I'll put a motion on the floor, and then we can discuss it. Council authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the 2024 new Tecumseth Public Library Board Agreement. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Davy, seconded by Councillor Manctalo. Discussion, context? Fred, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add to the report, Your Worship. It's pretty straightforward. It's an annual agreement with the library.
Yep. Go ahead.
In principle, it's not a large amount, so I'm not going to make a big deal of it. But in principle, I think it's a problem. We tie our donation to the budget, their budget. They set the budget. We don't have anything to do with it. So in principle, I think it would be better if we had a set amount rather than saying, we'll take whatever part of the budget you have. Because it says that the user fees will match any increases in the library's annual budget in the future.
Good point. I took that as, rather than it being 4%, if the budget was increased 8%, it would be 8%.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's my point.
We
too.
don't have anybody that sits at that library board, so.
I'm not going to fight with it because it's a small amount, but
Yeah.
in principle, it's not a good idea.
Any thoughts, Fred?
And that, of course, doesn't apply to this agreement. The amounts listed in this agreement are fixed. That would be in a 2025 agreement, at which time council has the option whether to enter into it or not.
Okay. Any opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the 2024 Borrowing Bylaw, Temporary Borrowing Bylaw. Les?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council's familiar with this bylaw. It's the annual bylaw we pass for the bank to authorize that we continue having our overdraft protection. Nothing has changed.
So I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing of funds, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further discussion? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is a motion having to do with the keeping of hens in residential zones. I'm happy to report that our planning committee did meet to consider this issue, and we have a recommendation which I'll read, and then we can have questions and comments. Motion says as follows, that council directs staff to prepare a draft bylaw for the keeping of backyard hens, and further that council directs staff to prepare a short public consultation process. Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Councillor Magdalene, I believe. Discussion, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. This is very interesting. I know where this came from, and that there had been a push for it, in which I guess is why it says short public consultation process. I have a problem with our public consultation stuff, and it just speaks to the comment that we had just a few minutes ago of, well, I've heard that people want us to get on with the kite thing, but let's move it quickly. How has the public input been? Well, we you haven't tabulated it yet or something, but it also sounds like there isn't much. And yet there has been equally in the social media realm, there's also been discussion of how come Mono doesn't have kite battling. There's battles in all the other municipalities around, which is not true. That's not the point is that the public that we represent have some different ideas about things, and if they have different ideas because they're misinformed, then it behooves us to go out of our way to make sure that everybody is on the same page with things. And it's an interesting thing that the hen thing comes up because we have a bylaw, that says that if you have rural property, carry on. And yet, when I was campaigning, even in rural properties, there were comments of, can you help I'm disturbed by the rooster next door. So, I think the public input is I'm discouraged by it saying a short public consultation process, which again, just makes me feel like we would be perceived as rushing through something without careful consideration for both sides of the fence story. That's my, yeah.
Well, I want to make a comment, and that is, people elect us for a purpose, and that's to make decisions on their behalf. And sometimes when we make decisions that aren't popular, we hear from people. But we're now entering into, I think, a very treacherous territory where everything we are proposing to do has to go out to public input before we actually pass a bylaw or make a decision. I think we have to be somewhat selective. And I think Hens, frankly, is not something that requires an inordinate amount of public input. The issue has been in front of this council or in front of staff and this council for over a year. I think that we have to see what the draft bylaw looks like and whether it has some kind of appeal mechanism. But if we're going to make policy, make it policy that every single idea that comes before us is something that has to go out to public consultation with all that entails, then I don't think we're doing our job. If we selectively choose the issues, and we will get it right more often than we will get it wrong, I just don't think we're doing our job by putting something like this out to a public consultation.
Can I refute? Just to clarify, I'm not saying that I'm saying that our public is telling us that they're not aware of all the things all of the time. They're telling us that. So how can you say that how can we say that we represent them if we didn't get to hear their opinions? And if there is anything that is important, it is what's happening in a built-up zone where I have a 50-foot lot and there's going to be some activity going on outside. That is something that I think, in contrast to we just immediately passed a bylaw to borrow money without asking anybody. So I think we already do things selectively.
That bylaw, why don't we put it out to public consultation? It is a routine bylaw. It comes up every single year. It allows our treasurer to make certain that we have the financial resources to carry on as a municipality. And that, to me, is an example of the kind of routine thing that we're elected to make those decisions.
Exactly,
And if we get it wrong, we will hear from people.
Well, that's what I just said, though. The treasure, we already do selective. This is a brand new thing in our developed areas that people want to have hens. It's a new concept for people. I think public consultation in this, and in fact, it was recommended that there's public consultation in this by everybody. I just said I don't understand why we need to say short.
I would also note that this went to a committee of this council where it was debated and discussed. It has been on previous agendas. It has been on our radar for, as I say, over a year. And Mr. Coates, who is online, who is the person who triggered the request, he's also saying here, in fact, Justin, can you hear us? Dick
Yes,
Coates?
I can hear you.
Would you like to say something about this? Because you've gone through an awful lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first reached out. I grew up with chickens, and I wanted a similar lifestyle for my children. I moved from Orangeville to Mono, having grown up in Mono, and then found out once I had kids that I'm not allowed to have chickens because I happen to live in a residentially zoned area of Mono. Understood. So I did some research on neighboring municipalities, and basically everywhere, including Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga, have provisions to allow backyard hens. I just want to speak to the councillor's concern earlier that she heard when she was campaigning about, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. There was a concern about roosters when the councillor was campaigning. Fully understood. Roosters are a noise complaint. That's why my request was to have hens. Hens can still lay eggs for consumption without a rooster being present. And again, this was brought up over a year ago. There's been articles in the Orangeville Banner. The Mono newspaper has had a couple of articles on it as well. I think there's even been a couple of posts on the Facebook Q&A about this. And so far I've seen no negative input to the request.
Well, can we agree that we define short? Because all of a sudden, short becomes long.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I listened to this debate about how long the public consultation process should be, and it occurs to me, Mr. Simpson, that if you prepare a bylaw and we give it first reading, I mean, by definition, we've got a consultation process because the bylaw first reading then allows at least 2 weeks. Easily we can allow 4 weeks for the public to comment on that draft. So there's a built-in consultation process.
So my recommendation for this would be similar to the kite bylaw. That's what I consider short compared to, say, the noise or the fireworks bylaws, which are more involved. So this would involve first reading, then it would involve making sure this gets put onto our website, well promoted with the opportunity for residents to provide their comment. So mostly, it's a campaign to try to get the word out to those residents who are unaware, because they're not following a council meeting, of the potential of this, so that council has the benefit of hearing from both sides of the argument. What would define a long engagement would be one that included a survey. So this one wouldn't include a survey. It would just be a call to residents to provide comments with ample time for them to hear about that, get their comments in before it came back to council. So that's more than one council meeting space. That's at least a month.
Okay. You know, and just for clarity, it goes into council highlights. It goes on the website, and residents who want to follow council have to take some initiative to do so. We cannot spoon feed absolutely everyone in the town all the time. There has to be, it's a two-way street. We have to communicate, but they have to observe what we're doing through all the various mechanisms that we create to do that.
Thank you. A month is a great time. I agree with everything that you're saying. I just am hearing residents say, we know that our council highlights, which is a terrific item, we read it, but only 500 of our 7,000 voters are subscribed. So we know that that it's only a portion. So it's not that I'm against chickens. I have some. It's not or against Mr. Justin having them. What I'm against is us making a decision without everybody knowing, so that the guy who lives next door all of a sudden has, and I'm sorry, hens make noise too, and if I'm living very close to you, i.e. I'm in my bathroom and I can see you, I'm going to be able to hear the birds, and I'd like to have known they were coming. I may not even actually tell you that you can't do it or create a problem, but if people know ahead of time what's coming, they're usually more accepting. So that's more what I'm wanting to make sure that our residents are aware of what we're making decisions on.
Okay, so have I actually read this motion? I think I did. Okay. Is there any opposition to the motion? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. DeCotes, for your patience. Okay, we are on to Schedule A, and I have a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Manctalo. Items on Schedule A, and I've been bad because I didn't signal what I wanted to speak to. So let's just open it up. Go ahead, Elaine. Elaine, you go first.
So, I do want to look at number 2. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nix, for this. I appreciate it also worried about septic, because you said most of them are in the Toronto region, and so whatever. Salt, we're talking about 10 of the wells in Orangeville that have problems with sodium or chlorine, or chloride, and Mono has issues in its wells with higher levels of sodium and or chloride, and it's increasing every year. So I just want to understand what that increase, I know we get our reports and we look at them all the time, but in the bigger picture.
Your microphone.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying any attention. So, yes, number 2. And specifically looking at salt and the higher levels of either sodium or chloride and what is happening. And maybe, Mr. Nix, you've got more information about that.
Well, I know that the wells, the Cardinal Woods wells, have some problems to the point that we have to report the numbers to the health unit. Not that they're into any dangerous zone, they're high and they're increasing. Mike knows more about this probably than I do, and of course the fault is Matt's, because he's the one who spreads road salt on the roads. But I would defer to Mike's opinion on this subject.
So, to forefront, Public Works, as council's aware, we use a mix of sand and salt. So we do our best in our urban area to ensure that we don't impact the wells. Not could be said so much for, say, the province or the county, because they're using a straight brine or a straight salt sodium product, depending on weather. The county does have a sand equivalent that they would use during certain temperatures and certain dew points. Council may recall, I have spoke about salt generally on an annual basis when we receive I can never separate these two, but the annual or the summary report. I submit those to council at the same time. The Cardinal Woods wells have generally not seen a large increase since I've started. It is there. We are required by the health unit to report to the Wellington Health Unit, and that's for low sodium diet, people that are on a low sodium diet, or I may be wording that wrong, but it's for people that have sodium issues with respect to their diet, and their doctors do recommend. And I do know at one point, Jack Tupling and I had a former director with Orangeville, had a long discussion about about what that means in a glass of water. And it would be eight glasses, if I recall correctly, 8 glasses of water during the course of a day would be the equivalent of a normal serving of chips. That would account for that. So if you're on a low sodium diet, you probably shouldn't be eating chips anyway. But it is the equivalence of that, and I would like to put that out as memory. I would like to check into that, but it is low impact, and I do know Orangeville is definitely their wells are definitely in an area where the salt concentrations are higher. They do have more commercial properties that use probably generally straight salt, and through salt management, I know they're trying to monitor that. So generally Mono's leveled. But we're only bounded by 2 highways as well.
Could I just add a point to what Mike just said, if that's okay? And because when we discussed it at CBC, the staff there pointed to was the liability issue. If that's why Walmart and the town of Mono and the county and the highway spread salt, because they're afraid of liability. So if there's going to be a change, or if we can do anything about it, it would have to come, I guess, from provincial law, but what the limits of liability are if a car slips off the road or damages something.
Yeah, I just, do we know all of the sources of the sodium and chloride going into these wells? I can tell you I have witnessed people emptying their pools from their backyard down our roads. So does that get into the system? I don't know. And that's in, like, we're talking the urban areas as opposed to the rural areas. But like, I just, what are all the sources of that sodium or chloride that we should be, paying attention to? I don't know.
Former CAO Keith McNenly definitely identified softeners as well. It'd be in a perfect world, they would be purging to the outside grass as opposed to into your septic system. So, and they don't do a world of good for the breakdown in your septic system. So, the pools through proper companies, they should be using dechlorinization and neutralizing pucks to deneutralize the water prior to backwashing it. But we know that probably a lot of people are unaware of this, but there are the sources, and then there's the natural source, just like arsenic, right?
So Fred, and I'll get back to you, Elaine.
Can we talk about this one item, number 2?
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
My question,
Sound.
I'd like to,
Nope, didn't get it. Your microphone, sorry.
you keep your hand. I appreciate your help, but. I'd like just to understand this authority. I tried to look it up a little bit. The so-called Credit Valley source protection, it seems to involve the Toronto region and the Central Lake Ontario. And there seems to be a number of different initials that are used to describe them. I'm not quite sure. What is this authority, and how does, just in a couple of words, what's it responsible for?
It's responsible for the implementation of the, what's it called?
Source protection.
Source protection authority. And you at the NVCA have exactly the same thing, because you are part of the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Authority. Did I get the name right?
I think so.
So credit is part of they just combine 3 conservation authorities: Credit Valley, Toronto Region, and Central Lake Ontario. My sense is that the staff work, the lead agency, is in fact Credit Valley. If I got my numbers right, they have 2 employees for that enormous area. Their funding has been through the province up until now. The latest agreement ended on March 2024, and there clearly are some concerns. When they submitted a new funding proposal to the province, they were basically told to go back and cut it down. So that's the authority. It's the Credit Valley, Toronto, Central Lake Ontario Source Protection Authority.
And what are they charged with doing?
Implementing the source water protection plan.
Which is primarily related to drinking water?
Only drinking water. And it had 21 defined threats that the province identified. And you must be familiar with this at the NVCA. They went to all the wells. They looked at all those potential threats. They came up with where there's a big threat or a small threat, and they came up with a plan to do something about it.
And this is apparently, this would appear not to be much of a priority because it was adopted in 2015, and we still haven't done a lot of site visits for septic tanks, et cetera, et cetera. What's going on here?
Well, I understand that you can get that sense in reading my report, which is why I very carefully quoted from their report at the end, which is a lot more positive. My sense, and this is only a sense, so don't put this in writing or don't quote me, they were doing the implementation fairly well, and then along came the pandemic, which certainly slowed things down. You can't go out to a small manufacturer and knock on the door and say, hey, have you got a risk management plan? I'm here to talk to you. I mean, I guess you can do it, but it slowed things down considerably. I will tell you that from the discussion at the CBC, they also have run into some problem people. People say with a septic system within the wellhead protection zone, and they've gone there and they've looked at it and they said, your septic system isn't working, you got to do something about it. And the person just says no.
Yeah.
I don't know. They do have the power to issue orders, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand. To the best of my knowledge, there's no penalties under the Source Drinking Water Act, the Source Water Protection Act. So I think they've run into some problems, both with risk management plans at some locations and with some septic systems where the owners just refuse to do anything.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so that brings me to my other point about this, funding. So if this is a priority, and I would deem it is, because you need to have source water protection, otherwise everybody who takes water from that source is at a potential harm, right? And so there was a whole big study, there was a lot of work done to this. This is back in 2010. And so it's mind-boggling that this is such a priority, and the documents are probably piled up to the sky about this, and yet the province is not funding this fully. And I think the province, again, needs to fund its agencies so they can do the job of source water protection, and it should have a higher level of priority. That, I think this is shameful. That's just my comment.
I agree, but I will say in fairness to the provincial government, if you go back to Walkerton and the days after that, they have spent millions of dollars on source water protection, millions. Yes, there seems to be a bit of a problem now, but I just want to put that out there as part of the issue, okay? They did do a lot, they did spend a lot of money on this issue.
Right, I've seen signs, source water protection sign, where, you know, something could spill and they have to make sure they pay attention to it. Okay, so that's one item, so, do you want me to name another one? Try another one.
And then we'll,
Okay, so, again, Deputy Mayor Nix, thank you for number 3 for this report. Yeah. I noticed that Island Lake, and, you know, if the numbers are not 100%, I'm okay with that. $655,000 is what the gate fees are, and their operating costs are 1.1 million. This speaks to what we were talking about before with them having to organize events and host events and do fundraising because the government doesn't pay them enough money. And so I wanted to understand where are because they have a lot of rentals there. So where is that taken into account? Is that part of, they consider that under gate fees, or is that separate?
That's a very good question, and Chris Garretts has asked me the same, and I've written back to CBC to ask them. My understanding is the number I gave you, the $655,000, is gate fees. And as Chris Garretts pointed out, they do rentals, they have events. They also, when you look at the Vicky Barron Trail, the town of Orangeville and the town of Mono put in $20,000 a year. So that there are other sources of revenue, and what I will try to do is add the gate fees and all these other sources so we can get a better picture as to whether Island Lake Conservation Authority is costing us.
Sustainable.
Yes, I'll try to do that.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much for that. The other question I have related to this is the Credit Valley Trail. Where is that, and where does it go, and does it cross through Mono, and did they purchase Mono properties?
No, it will end at Island Lake Conservation land. It will cross at Bona Vista, cross 10 at Bona Vista, and then it'll go through that Phragmites field. Somehow it'll
The marsh.
So there's no, other than the fact that it ends at Island Lake Conservation Area, most of which is in the town of Mono. No, Mono is not really affected by this trail. By the way, the people at Credit Valley seem to think, and I chastise them for this, that the source of the Credit Valley, of the Credit River, is Orangeville. I pointed out it's not. It's Mono, Amaranth, and East Gary.
Right.
And the only thing Orangeville contributes to the credit is a sewage treatment plant.
Very good.
thank you very much. Okay, Fred, and then I'll get back to you.
I
Elaine.
don't have any items.
Okay.
And number 11. Like, I read this, and I read this, and I read this. This is Bill 185. And I still just want to know, what is the real impact to Mono? That's what I want to know. What's the bottom line?
Les, any insights?
Well, I don't have like a number, like the real impact, but the definite benefits is the phasing in has been eliminated. We are now in the process of updating our study, and we can add our administrative studies, like our planning study, road study, anything along those lines. It is a positive move, because the impact on deferring would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars, for sure. But now we don't have to defer. We can collect 100% from day one. We'll go into reserve. I mean, that's the biggest impact, is the deferring.
Okay, so that will all be reflected in our new bylaw?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you, Les.
Thank you, Mayor Kerman. In my reading of it, they just were talking about taking it all away and changing it, and then it's now, did anything really happen with respect to collection?
It did for municipalities when this legislation was put in place. They had to update their bylaw. Because our bylaw was still in place, it didn't affect us, but it did affect others. So there was a big pushback to the province.
Well, that's right. So then they removed things, but it happened quickly enough that I wondered whether was there time enough for the collection to have been interrupted? It didn't. It seems to me it was only just last year, wasn't it? So I read it all thinking, well, no, I'm not giving you kudos for giving back something that you wrongfully took away.
To add another wrinkle to this story, which is not here, there's been a dispute between the federal government and the provincial government on the national housing strategy and the money that flows through to the various regions, including Dufferin County. And I heard on this morning's news that they've come to federal and provincial governments have come to an agreement, and one part of that agreement was to freeze DC charges on, I would assume, affordable houses, but I'm not sure of that, Les. So are you up to speed? We're doing a DC study. I'm not quite sure what the federal government's demand to Ontario was, but it has something to do with the DC.
What business is it of theirs?
I don't know.
I heard the same thing.
I believe the legislation is gearing that there will be less development charges on affordable housing if even exempt.
Well, currently they're proposing exempt, are they not? Currently they're proposing exempt, are they not?
Yes, they are. And then there's,
So-
of course, the word that,
So the taxpayer picks up 100% of the costs of that development.
But that won't necessarily affect us unless we have a developer building affordable houses. And since I'm not entirely sure of the definition of affordable houses yet, I don't know.
They don't even know.
No, they
don't.
release that
Yeah.
None of the proposals are
None of them are building, exactly. And Les, does this have anything to do with a previous bill where the province committed to make whole, that their expression, any losses to municipalities, and then they started a study of Peel and a few other places, and then they stopped? They seem to have backed off that.
I believe you're correct. It's kind of fallen by the wayside. So I believe some of these amendments have, like Councillor Capes has said, that they've taken it away, now give it back, has an impact on making municipalities whole, because then it would cost the province a lot of money to make up for lost development charges. So they thought about it and said, whoops, maybe we better not do this.
Right. Right. Okay, anything else? I have a couple of things. I promise to do my homework next time. Item number 9, it's a good news item, that having to do with aircraft traffic enforcement. This occurred in both Caledon and Dufferin. And they had a blitz on and a significant number of charges laid. Interestingly, when they observe a vehicle from the plane, they have to maintain visual sight of that vehicle until the ground officers actually stop it. If they lose the visual contact, they can't lay a charge. The other thing that I draw people's attention to is number 10, and My computer has just given up the ghost here.
Mine did too.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is an email that I received from a ministry person. I've been in communication with a very knowledgeable Mono resident about soils issues. And they noted that the Brock Pit was not on a website that it should be on for purposes of reporting rehabilitation activities. And it's not a government website, it's a third-party website that's been mandated by the government to have reporting on these kind of things. And they tipped me off to the fact that it wasn't there. A Lafarge site in the town is in fact on the site, on that site, but not the Brock Pit. So they also provided me with the name of this public servant, who I wrote and said, you know, what's going on here? And this email is the response to that inquiry. And I do not pretend to understand 10% of it. It seems like there's two ministries involved, and there's no clear answer to the question of why Brock is not reporting. I've shared this with Mike, and maybe he has some insights.
Really, what I'm interpreting here is the self-governance of Brock Aggregates to only report when they're required, greater than 10,000 meters cubed being the trigger. So I'm assuming that the MNRF and the records that Brock have allowed them to abstain from registering for the soil registry. I do know, though, that they are doing some recycling of aggregate as well, right? What's coming in and going out, so which would convolute the numbers deeply, right?
Well, Lafarge is relatively passive by comparison to what's happening at Brock and the impact that they're having on Hockley Road, the number of truck movements. I mean, I get a lot of calls from people basically saying, what's going on here? And, you know, it's quite alarming that they don't even meet the criteria necessary to put an explanation up on this website.
Yeah, and that's, you know, Matt and I generally have seen that these trucks are leaving full as well.
Yeah.
So they're leaving full as well, so, you know, and
Yeah, but be careful, the trucks that are leaving full are tractor semi-trailers with at least 7 axles. They're taking gravel out. The trucks going in with the remediation fill are 4-axle straight trucks, and they're not, when they leave, they're empty. I guarantee.
I haven't inventoried it enough to
I
know,
have.
but the trucks I have seen are moving full.
The
so-
tractor semi-trailers with gravel. Because
Yeah,
they-
I've seen
when-
tandems as well, but like I say, I haven't sat there 24/7 to.
There's still
to watch
some
it.
enormous piles where when they graded the gravel in the pit that they are emptying of gravel. They-
Probably a sand fill, probably a
They
sand
took the,
fill.
what do you call it, the big elevator and the grader thing out, it's gone. And what's left in the pit now are 2 or 3 enormous piles, enormous piles of gravel, different grades of gravel.
There was a lot of A gravel at one point, but it didn't, and the town stopped using it because it didn't meet spec. Yeah. More used for fill.
Town stopped using it because,
It didn't meet the OPS spec,
which was,
which was the gradations of the fracture counts and fine creation and,
so it wasn't a matter of where it come from.
no, it wasn't a matter of where it came from. It stopped meeting spec, and they got into a marble style of 3/4 inch gravel that wasn't getting crushed at all. So there was no fines being generated once they got down that low in their pit floor.
Okay. Last call on Schedule A. Moving along then, reports of members of council and staff. Who would like to, I think we had a motion and, that we accept Schedule A to this
It's been moved
agenda.
and seconded, but it hasn't been
Okay, any
carried.
opposed to the adoption? Okay. Who would like to go first on reports? Fred?
Yeah, I have four quick things, and I won't take much time. One is the Headwater Streams Committee, and I'm the only one left doing it, but I've been out to 3 properties so far this year fighting the giant hogweed. I did do the Alzheimer's walk on Sunday. The town of Mona was not a bronze sponsor of the walk. I've also been in contact with, as has Mike Dunmore, with the people who've organized Brave Canoe, and I'm not sure what to report because there's only a couple of people in the organization, and they're volunteers. I think that's part of the problem. I've emailed them, and I have not received a response, and I think Mike has emailed them. But I think coming down the road, actually the person who does probably know what's going on is Lisa Post, because she is quite close to one of the organizers of Brave Canoe, and I asked her about it. I think there's going to be a session coming up either in August or September on truth and reconciliation and some training. And if there is, if we can finally get the dates and the location of it and how it's organized, I would encourage both Mono Council and Mono staff to attend. The fourth thing I have to report is this, Dufferin County has a climate action plan. And I reported a year ago that one of the pieces of that plan is going to be a home retrofit program. Now, this is long and complicated. We had a report at our last committee meeting last week. I'm a bit impatient as to why this plan is taking so long to come in to be implemented, but the truth is, it's a very complicated scenario. Dufferin was one of 7 municipalities picked in the province to get some money to do this, and they have to jump through a number of hoops to get there. They're hoping by the end of this summer we'll know whether we get the grant, and we're looking at about $15 million. It's a lot of money. There are some, I still think, some problems with the plan. Now, one of them, which Fred Simpson, I had asked you about, every municipality is going to have to pass a bylaw that allows us to implement local improvement charges on people's taxes, okay? And I know how overworked Fred Simpson already is, but I did find out last week, Fred, that they're going to have a template bylaw for us. So we don't have to do any work. We'll just, here's the template, pass the bylaw, and it's in place. The town of Mona has had one of those bylaws in place before when we did the water main along Highway 9. It allowed us to attach to 10 commercial properties, their tax base, the cost of that water main. So this will be a similar type of bylaw that will allow us to attach to some people's residences to their property taxes. It's in effect like a loan. If they get a loan to put a heat pump in and maybe the payback period is 10 years, well then they'll put that payback thing onto their tax. The advantage of it is it doesn't attach to an individual. So the person living in that house, he could sell the house and walk away the next day. The tax is based with the LIC, local improvement charge, stays in place. So it is coming, folks. I know it's been a long time coming, but I hope we see some action, see an actual plan, maybe by the end of this year. I'm not sure. I'm hoping we do. That's all I have to report.
Thank you.
I have had a number of concerned residents reaching out to me about the fact that they cannot get swimming lessons for their children. Swimming lessons is a life-saving skill that I think we need to support. Orangeville, rightly so, it is their pool and their taxpayers pay for that pool, have declared that only Orangeville residents get first choice, first access to registration, and by the time they open it up for anybody else, there's nothing left available. So this is concerning to a number of parents with younger children because they cannot get life-saving swimming lessons for their children. So I bring that forward. It's just, I don't know how to bring it to this table other than it's under my report, Council. So what do we do? I mean, I heard a rumor in the past that the YMCA was interested in coming to Dufferin County. I don't know if we can pursue that from the county's perspective or somewhere else. I don't know if we can take the park dedication fees and put a roof over the pool in Shelburne. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's concerning that people can't get swimming lessons, you know, and we have 5 million hockey rinks, and I don't think hockey ever saved anybody's life, but I know it's a popular recreation here, and so I think we need to think about that at some point, just bringing that forward. So I don't know what to tell these residents about, you know, how we can work with Orangeville to make sure there are some spaces available to non-Orangeville residents.
Any thoughts?
So we don't have any facilities, obviously, here. We have to tie it in with other municipalities. So your suggestion, Elaine, is that we chat with Orangeville and suggest that we'd like to have an arrangement which allows or maybe a proportion of our population to have equal access to Orangeville, much as we do for library or other facilities. I think it's worth exploring.
I'm happy to raise it with Lisa Post. The one caution I'd suggest is what we don't know is their pool has been closed since
3 years.
the earth was cooling, and they may have lost their lifeguards and some of their trainers. So I just throw that out as a possibility that may be part of the problem.
Yeah, now the Centre Dufferin Recreation Complex has a full complement of staff this summer, and they've got their summer camp is full, but they do swimming lessons before camp, after camp, on the weekends and so on. So I'd be surprised if there weren't spots available for our Mono residents, but it's an issue of proximity, right? I mean, when you talk about the libraries, we have libraries around and for different people in different areas. And so if everybody from Mono all of a sudden wanted swimming lessons, I think that the CDRC might not be able to accommodate, but I would certainly point them in that direction. And yes, it's a summertime activity, but yeah, I would say that Orangeville's probably overwhelmed and with a staffing problem.
And I'll follow up as well. Okay. Ralph, anything?
Nothing. Well, I want to the registration is open for the Pollinator Garden Festival. I'd encourage any of the council and staff who are interested to register. It is free, but registration is required, and it's on the town website. And I have to compliment Andrew Dahmer for his ability to put these things together and quickly and effectively. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I guess, and then to harp on my trying to use all the avenues to let our residents know things, I do know that as a member of the Recreation Advisory Committee, we did have an opening in our town that we've advertised. There's been a press release for and so on, but you know, pickleball and tennis is alive and well, and we've got fabulous new facilities. So if anybody's listening or watching this later and didn't know that, now you should be informed. But that's all that I've got to report.
Yes, and some of us attended the two recent openings, the pickleball and Mono Center, and my hat's off to the organizers and MC who acquitted himself very well in terms of keeping the event rolling. Lots of excitement around the pickleball and the Mono Center courts, and of course not to leave the Lynn Gibson courts out of the equation as well. I'm hearing that they may not be as well used as maybe we expected, but I don't know that for a certainty. But the exhibition of wheelchair tennis was quite interesting to see, and great skill. I mean, just wonderful skill. So that's my report. Oh, I did meet with I think I may have mentioned this before, I did finally meet with the Minister of Transportation along with the Mayor of Calden. And that was 3 weeks ago yesterday. And they promised to follow up on the 2 letters that have remained outstanding with no response since the beginning of the year, since January, actually earlier than January. One is December, the other one is February the 12th, I believe. Having heard nothing yesterday, I wrote to the minister's staff and asked that they follow up with responses. And I'd also indicate that one of those letters was our declaration of a road safety emergency, and it was also addressed to the Premier, and he hasn't replied either. Planning an election.
So when they do the Highway 10 safety study, because that's coming, are they going to look at things like the 10th Side Road where people are trying to get on and off that highway? And are they going to look at Camilla where people are trying to get on and off that highway as part of the safety?
The mayor and myself raised those very points, specific to the Caledon segment of the study, which we are told is complete but not yet released. The Dufferin portion should be ongoing as we speak, but the February 12th letter specifically asked the minister, are you taking into consideration measurement of speed on Highway 10? Because it wasn't clear to the Police Services Board that the OPP could deploy the Black Cat technology that we purchased for them on a provincial highway. We didn't get a warm and fuzzy feeling that they're even allowed to do so, that they can only use that equipment on county and local roads. The other question we asked was, are you going to look at, are you going to do an analysis of accidents, speeding tickets, or various other HTA tickets that are handed out along the stretch of Highway 10? Again, really important questions over and above simply the design feature of the road and whether it is safe or not safe. But we don't even have terms of reference for that study. So we can't say whether or not they are going to look at those things or whether we can have a meeting with them to encourage the scrutiny of Camilla and 10th Side Road and other intersections. But it's all a big black box at the present time, and that was the purpose, one of the purposes for our meeting. Okay. Mike? Or Les? Okay. Matt?
Thanks, Mayor Krillman. Just briefly, we, as you know, we had a large event this past weekend. It went really well, the biking and cycling. It was a little bit wet. I sent some photos around yesterday. So Public Works is currently reviewing 2 more events that are upcoming on weekends. One, the Screaming Squirrel, expected on June 9th. We're working with the county on that one. There'll be some of the event will be on county roads and county forest tracks.
Didn't hear that. What kind of event is that? A biking event?
The one that's coming up is a cycling event, Screaming Squirrel. This will be the 3rd year, I believe, in Mono. So that's coming up on June 9th, Sunday, June 9th, and then there's a horse ride event that's expected to take place on it's being proposed to take place on June 16th on some of the roads and private properties in Mono, and we're working with the applicant to process that. Public Works has installed 2 of its solar speed signs on 4th line and 1 at 39 Headwaters, so we're rotating those around our traffic control measures, devices. Speed humps will be installed hopefully next week, weather permitting. We're hoping to wrap up maintenance gravel this week and move to dust suppressant applications next week and into the next few weeks. So the hope is we'll have those installed, the speed humps installed early next week to mid next week. And that's all for me for now.
Yeah.
We're just curious, where are the speed humps being installed?
One will be on French Drive, one will be on First Line EHS, and I'm drawing a blank on the other 2 right now. We're rotating them around. We have lots of requests for these types of measures, And we're trying to allocate staff accordingly to put them around and just spread them out, so.
That's great. And does that kind of information go up on our website so people can see these are the actions that we're taking?
We haven't put the speed hump locations out there on the town's website before. There's a lot of information as far as our maintenance and operations of what we do. We haven't gone out as far as posting the locations of the speed signs. They do rotate around. We collect, as we get phone calls, we enter them into a spreadsheet, and we, like I said, we rotate them around, and we obviously look at the sites and identify certain areas as being a good location for them. They have to be effective. Obviously, like, not every location unfortunately gets approved, but we try to look at it to, you know, the high traffic locations, spots that people are gonna see them and maybe be useful.
Right, and I'm not so sure to say where they are, but to say this is a measure that we are taking, and you will see speed humps
Yeah.
to slow traffic in Mono. Yeah, I think it's good.
I endorse the idea of a little bit of language on the website to explain what the purpose is, because there's at least one resident who was on social media very critical of the town for taking them away from his street. And it was all I could do but to respond by saying, it's not that we're taking it away. We launched it as almost as a not an experiment, but it was always understood, as far as I remember, that they were temporary and they would be moved around.
That's right. Thanks, Mayor Corman. It's something that they're very expensive. The humps are expensive. We have 4. We originally had 2, and we rotate them around. It does damage the asphalt too, right? There's a significant amount of lag bolts or bolts inserts that get screwed into the asphalt.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that part too. So we have, like I said, we have lots of requests. We're trying to be fair to everybody and equitable and spread them around to control the speeding.
Thanks, Mayor Croman. I remember that when we first got them, and they were a big success, everybody, the street that they went, and we had feedback here in the meetings and so on, that this is a really great idea, and that it was a pilot project, that we're gonna move it around and all that. But then what strikes me is, how do you get a permanent speed hump on your street? And do we as a town ever want to put one of those? Like, how do you plow those and that kind of a thing? But is that what happens eventually, that you do the pilot and you say, oh yes, this really worked when we had it there, let's put a couple of humps of asphalt?
Thanks, Councillor Davy. Yeah, I know some municipalities that have put them in as permanent, and they're a heck of the tables or humps. Like, the tables will have a flat top. They're a little bit, but they're a challenge with snow plows, obviously, and you know, you have to consider that. Emergency services isn't a huge fan, because you have a patient potentially with a broken neck or back in the back, and they're going over these and they're trying to get to scenes. So, you know, there's those things to consider as well, putting them in. You know, a lot of municipalities are doing what we do. They put them out in the spring. Generally, you try to, after we finish off the street sweeping and the maintenance gravel and the calcium and all those things. So then we get them in and they're there, and then wintertime, it's generally not, we don't receive as many speed complaints either. So there's that consideration too. So people obviously like them, the way that we're approaching it, because they want them. And I think it's fair that we receive the calls and we rotate them around into the places. You know, you can't put them on hills. There's certain, you know, there's constraints. So we try to work within those things and get the signage up and get the humps in place. And same with the solar speed signs. We rotate them around accordingly. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Fred.
So just to reiterate a couple things that I had mentioned earlier, the pride flag, the Progress Pride flag will be going up on Monday. And then on Tuesday, June 25th, prior to council meeting, There is a flag-raising ceremony for the Unity in Diversity flag, so that's a multicultural flag. That will fly for a week. Also, I'd mentioned the kite fighting bylaws proposed to come back on June 25th. The noise bylaw that was given first reading, I told council I would report back this meeting on the engagement process. So Andrew has put together a comprehensive community engagement process. It will include a hard copy survey that will be mailed to all residents. We did this with the fireworks bylaw, though it will be available online as well. So that will be in the mail late June, just due to the times to draft, print, and mail. And it will be available through the month of July. It will be supported with newsletter or mailings, any electronic mailings such as council highlights it'll be included in. It'll be in the newspaper, be promoted twice in the newspaper. Through social media and our website, we'll have a hot topics section on our website for this. The plan is to bring that back for second reading on August 20th. Our prosecutor, Paul Dre, is confirmed to be in attendance virtually for that meeting. So we'll have all of that feedback, plus we'll have our legal expertise all available for council to talk to and with.
The second reading is, will we allow, or will we have the public in the room? Will we be having the public speaking?
Yeah, so second reading will be similar to a planning statutory public meeting, so it'll be open for residents, and it'll be promoted as such.
Thank you. And to be clear, that is one bylaw that I am fully in favor of this degree of public participation. In case anyone's wondering, go ahead.
Just a question, the list of invitees to hear that second reading on August 20th, does that include our OPP?
Yeah, so we will be sending out notice to our stakeholders. We'll be anticipating written comments from the stakeholders, but that's part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
And just in furtherance of that, the OPP have always been very amenable to accepting from us a list of bylaws that they would be prepared to enforce on our behalf, and that certainly is one of them. It's one of the main ones, actually. Okay. And finally, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Crowman. So we've been, staff's been busy backfilling for quite a few positions right now. Filling in for Director of Recreation, Fred and I, and Les is helping. We're stabilizing our planning department right now, that's for sure. I believe our customer service is doing a great job. We are, I know Councillor Capes mentioned that Airbnb's coming up during vacation season, so staff will be starting to take some vacation here for sure. Yeah, with respect to the Brave Canoe, Town of Mono is committed to offering and helping with their Truth and Reconciliation platform. I think Deputy Mayor Nix is correct. I think there's two people that are trying to do a very good thing, and I think what I had envisioned and what the original member Julia had hoped to do with the Town of Mono, maybe in cooperation with more municipalities than just site-specific to Mono. We can only do what they can do, but we are committed in the 2024 budget to have that as a staff initiative to attend, and council and committees was where we had set aside. So we're hoping for the best to work with Lisa Post on that matter. I'll probably attend the Shelburne EA on the water supply issue. Should council want to get an idea of what the arsenic Schedule B EA process will be. It'll be similar to the Shelburne water supply process. I have a meeting this Friday, which with R.J. Burnside to set out the path and the process with respect to the arsenic EA. With respect to that, yeah, it's heartfelt to hear that swimming lessons may not be available to people, but it is an important thing, and Nottawasaga Inn definitely has pool space available as well. And I know there would be lessons on there. It's when you speak about pickleball, they have people on the waiting list, and it's a good thing. When you speak about swimming, people on a waiting list to take life-saving lessons is something that hopefully parents literally go the extra mile to have that for their children and for adults, for that matter. Rosemont Fire, I'm working with the CAO from Agila Tasaranio to try and stay on top of that. I would request that our board members keep that on their list. The last notice from Agila is that they're trying to host a public consultation process. They've reached out to us with our addresses. So I'm hoping, and I was adamant that we want our Mono residents to be part of that discussion, and not just, while I understand it's a direct budget effect on Agila, Tasaranio, it would be nice to have ensure that the Mono residents that receive fire services from Rosemont were included in the discussion. So I'm hoping that happens. To Fred's dismay, probably, I'll be working on the chicken bylaw, the backyard hens bylaw, and hopefully I can get a good draft copy that he'll be satisfied with to move it forward for council. One thing that's been going on in the background with council emails is the OLT hearing for Aragon. There's 2 or 3 things that are running in parallel right now with respect to the responses from Aragon to the OLT. And I'm hoping to have a session shortly for council to help council try and understand those. I spoke to the town solicitor for a half hour yesterday, and I think I have it figured out what they're trying to do, but it's definitely, they're utilizing every avenue at the board to dispute our claims. Other than that, that's about it, unless there's any questions from council.
Just apropos of the Rosemont Fire Board situation, I watched their council meeting where they were proposing to withdraw from the fire department. And I'm quite convinced that it would have gone through at that meeting if it weren't for several members of council wildly objecting. There was one member of council who said he would quit council rather than see this go through. There's a lot of controversy about their statistics and their financial assumptions. I'm a little concerned that I went on their website the other day. I found no mention of this at all. And I'm just concerned that they're going to announce an evening and hope that nobody shows up, and then they'll go back to the council and say, see, there's no local opposition to this. I've also spoken to the mayor of Malmer, and I've said, we have to talk about this, and I'm concerned that maybe Malmer is not as excited about the problem as we are.
In simple terms, I think the split between Malmer and Mono price would go up to continue to fund the horrible, the convoluted part about their report is they use Google Maps to strike the distance for service. I don't know any fire truck that would get to my house in 10 minutes, but when you use Google Maps, it's 10-minute drive if you're suited and packed and ready to go. So. In speaking with our chief representative, Mike BYLAWS, the confusing part is we're still going to be attending, because of our location at Seventh Line, we'll still be attending, and possibly the first call. So I haven't been able to figure this, I haven't been able to sort this out from the Ontario Fire Prevention situation, but I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it. And I'm trying to get my head wrapped around Rosemont not attending to a fire in Agila at Rosemont, and what the liabilities, like why would you drive 10 miles when you got 5 miles sitting by the side, and don't mark the numbers, but that's what I'm really trying to understand with this process, how in the future Rosemont, what it does, right? So as John mentioned, he's speaking with the mayor, and I'm speaking with the CAO, trying to gather her opinion on the matter, so.
And I have a number of connections in the citizen community there who are waiting for that meeting to happen. And they will demand that meeting, a public meeting for consultation.
I'll do a follow-up with the CAO following council meeting.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think it's important that we're circulated on the date and time of that meeting, and that we show up en masse. I mean, this has been a great little fire department. I was one of the founding members of the board there, and I just don't get it. I mean, you're absolutely right about, we'd still be on the hook for mutual aid. You know, and we could put the price up all we want, and that kind of thing, and they wouldn't be saving any money at all once they end up paying for a Rosemont attendance to a fire that is more readily fought by the Rosemont Fire Board than their current fire board.
I just echo strongly what you said. This is a very efficient fire department. I sat on the board for 2 terms, and it's well managed. They've got a great staff of firefighters, and it's very economical. So it would be a shame to tear it apart when we'd end up, particularly when we would end up going to their fires in Agilitas because of mutual aid.
Thank you, Mayor. But I'm the present chair of the fire board at Rosemont, and it's not it's not taking it apart. We're not going to not have it. It's that it's going to cost us more, and we're going to charge them if they were not involved, and arguably charge them even more, and so on. But I mean, it's not that Mono residents aren't going to be served by the Rosemont Fire Board. I don't want our discussion here to be misconstrued about what's going on. There's a neighboring municipality that is having some, I suppose, budgetary questions and trying to come around how to make things better. And perhaps there's somebody who's championing it who doesn't have the full scope of the whole equation of what the ramifications are. But the Rosemont Fire Board is not going away with this change of one town.
Quite right, but with most organizations, there's a critical size at which they stop functioning well, and this is going to get smaller, and you don't know when it's going to reach the size where it's not functioning well. It's not very large right now, so I'd be worried about it.
I do too, because I think it's a very narrow review and narrow perspective that these consultants have taken. And if they were to live in one of those houses that might not be served as well because of their change, are we saying that lives are not worth a few $100,000? Like, you're just going to decide, oh, well, that's not, so their house burns down and the people die. No, this is a serious thing. It is life-saving services. And so I don't think to just, brush it off to a budget consideration is a very prudent and human thing to do.
Well, the Ontario Fire Marshal might have some opinions about this as well.
One of the big items we haven't talked about today is by the agreement they'll be looking for a third of their capital investment back,
Oh, yes.
so.
I honestly, in the little portion that I listened to, I got the impression that they hadn't even thought about that, and they hadn't even thought about the cost of mutual aid by Rosemont. I mean, they're simply looking at it on a per-call basis, that they can do it cheaper than Rosemont can. Well, that's seeing, 20% of the topic. Okay. So, notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, we don't have any in-camera items. I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Mono in session 10-2024, held on 28th of May, 2024, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Mantalo. Any opposition? And I have a further motion that we adjourn this meeting at 11 a.m. Councillor Davey moves, seconded by Councillor Capes. And I see no opposition. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.